Hey, Dave. Good to
Hey,
have you.
Dave, how you doing?
I'm really well, actually. Today's a good day. We don't always get to talk in person, so any
Yeah.
day that I get to see you in the flesh is a good day.
Definitely. Well, I'm excited about today. It should be fun.
And yeah, I think so. Even better than seeing you in person, we get to talk about I think one of my favorite things in recent memory. So I'm not digging up the history, but
That is quite a teaser there for the conversation.
I agree. So so let's get at it. A little bit of history to set the table for folks that haven't met us together.
Yeah.
Where are you coming from? What's your life like in a nutshell right now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. So I'm Dave Matthews. I'm originally born and raised in Lima, Peru. When I was in middle school, my family moved over to the U.S., moved to Florida. And so I did middle school, high school there. Ended up going to Moody, where I met my wife from the Midwest, Sarah. And we've been involved in missions ever since. So I'm a Latin American. She is a Midwestern. And we are full-time missionaries working with Reflejo, a missions agency. We'll get a little bit more into Reflejo later. But we basically work in sending missionaries from Latin America to difficult places.
Awesome. And you're living in the U.S. now?
I'm living in the U.S. Fun fact about us, I think we've been married 8.5 years and have moved at least 7 times to cities or different countries. And so right now, yes, we are in Kentucky. It's going great. It is significantly better weather for me than Panama was, where we were at last, which somebody asked me to describe weather in Panama yesterday on a call. And I said, it's hot like hell, but with more traffic. So I'm not a fan of hot weather, but
delightful.
I love Panamanians. But yes, I love the weather here, and I'm excited to be here in Kentucky.
But do they have cicadas? That's what you got to get. Can't get enough of that in Kentucky. Awesome. Also Dave.
So go ahead, Dave. Tell us
great.
about you.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Kentucky. So I'm from the U.S., but my mom's from the Philippines. And so there's always been like a cross-cultural piece to our family. She and my dad planned on living overseas, and my dad currently serves overseas, but I currently work in a sending role at a church in the U.S. So I'm the missions guy at our church in Kentucky. And part of my role is exploring partnerships and understanding how God's working through other cultures to reach the whole world with the gospel. And I think that's where our relationship really started.
Yeah.
Is exploring how do we as a Western church, how do we participate, not just from our little corner of the world and who God's bringing to us, but how do we help join his efforts around the world? And so hearing a little bit of your story and seeing like, hey, I think maybe there's opportunity for us to work together. And it's been fun. It's been really fun so far. And I'm excited to see where we can make those projects and partnerships happen more.
Yeah, likewise. No, thank you for that intro. So let's get a little bit to what this is about. You teased it as it's one of your favorite topics.
Yeah.
And so give us a little bit there, and then I'll jump in afterwards.
Yeah, so I think where the Western church is most helpful, right, is facilitating conversations and actually leveraging some of the lessons that God's taught us over the few hundred years that we've been working globally, but to start conversations about where is God moving currently? So we love hearing the historic stories of his faithfulness and what he's been doing, but looking a little bit ahead and trying to keep pace. Where is he at today, and where do we think he's going next? And how can we keep pace, right, and match? And so hearing stories from Latin America, hearing stories from other workers and where they are currently and hoping to be, I think we can share resources beyond just money. We can dream a little bit, but I think we also get to help learn lessons together.
Okay.
And that's what I'm really excited about.
So to tie that together, then what you're saying is I'm excited about what God is doing next. And what I think I'm understanding from you is you're saying where God is moving next is not necessarily just from North America to the rest of the world. He's moving from everywhere the church is to everywhere the church and the kingdom still needs to be. Is that right?
You said it a lot better than I sounded in my head, but that is exactly it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not just from the West to the rest.
Right.
Right. That used to be kind of a catchphrase. But
Right. Some people call it now polycentric mission. Another term that we really use in the missions world is global sending. So non-Western sending, people being sent as missionaries cross-culturally from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a big part of our topic is global sending. How does that work? Why should that work? How can we come alongside of what God is doing? Or maybe you can share some stories and things about what God already has done and how we can learn from them. And then a big question, obviously we're speaking English, right? Not Spanish or something else for a different audience around the world. But a big question for our English-speaking audience is if people from around the world are being involved and going, and that's really a place where God is moving right now, how do we come alongside them? How do we come alongside God? And that leads us to that kind of second point that we're going to talk about, cross-cultural partnership.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about cross-cultural partnership.
Yeah, man. So we love finding people that God has called. That's part of our church. So we're not assuming that just because you're working a regular job, right, or you're a stay-at-home mom or a student, you're not waiting to be paid to be a Christian before God uses you. He doesn't use professionals. And that's not just a Western thing. God uses people in every form of life, in every place that the kingdom is. And we think that's part of what makes God's glory really shine, is seeing the different lenses. And so partnership it's less about shoving resources into needs and finding places like, oh, who needs a sandwich or who needs shoes? And it's more about who has a piece of God's glory that needs a spotlight to really shine. And how can we angle light towards that person so that God can be most glorified in their ministry and in their life? And so the partnership is reciprocal, right? As we get to shine the light, we also get to see pieces of God that we didn't see before. And Lord willing, right, the whole world gets to see a piece of God that wasn't really shining before that either. So we get blessed when we help other people display God's glory. And one of the best ways that we know to do that is by sharing the gospel in really hard places. And so watching somebody who is called by God and empowered by the Holy Spirit really live out the gospel, and in doing it in a way that they couldn't without some of the other resources that the kingdom has to offer. So God's blessed our church a lot, just in counseling and in preaching and some finances. And so we get to shine a really unique light in some really interesting places, like Latin America, right? So God's been doing a work in Latin America for centuries, right? And we're just now catching up and being able to say, like, hey, can we help send resources, not just to our partners, but to people that God's already calling and moving? And so those partnerships exist and are growing. But we think it's also with Asians. We think it's with folks from Europe, right? There's churches in Europe and Asia that are sending their own people. And so we want to see how can we help not just our church send resources, how can we help those churches send resources? So I think that's part of your heart, is not just equipping the workers, right, but equipping the people who send the workers. And that's really exciting to me. So when I say it's part of our most exciting topic, it really is front of mind, is how do we help the people who are sending do their job really well?
Okay.
And I think that's part of the partnerships.
Okay, yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I think of what you're mentioning, partnerships, and for partnership, the word marriage comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
It's these two coming together and becoming one for a purpose, for a goal.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I just think when I got married, all the preparation, premarital, dating, conversations, things that had to happen.
Yeah.
And then you're married, you have your honeymoon, and you're happy ever after, right?
Everything's
perfect.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. It all works.
It's actually a lot of work to start living that out. The before, the during, the after.
Yeah.
It's
a starting line.
It's a starting line.
Yeah.
And there's so much work, so much nuance. There's different stages before kids, with kids, and so on, right, that you get to have over time. And I imagine for cross-cultural partnerships, there's kind of that depth to it as well, where just to find, I mean, if you're dating for a partnership, right?
Right.
You're looking around saying, who might be a good fit to work with us? I mean, I'm thinking you're not just going on Tinder swiping right and left on ministries, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more research, a lot more connections, alignment, what that may look like. And that's just to explore, like, is there something worth pursuing here? And then can we find a project to work together? How's that going to go? And then build on that over time. There's probably a lot that we could discuss on that topic.
Yeah. So how you fit together isn't just about do you like the same things, right? So there's a lot of folks that like the same kinds of things. It's a lot about how are you going about pursuing those values, and at what pace are you going? And so there's a lot of things that have to line up to make that partnership really functional and really pleasurable. Like it's a real joy to partner with somebody who's in alignment, going the same direction, about the same speed, for the same reasons. And so it's hard to help somebody in a partnership when one person's sprinting and the other person can barely limp. And so finding a way that you can match.
So partners need to be equally yoked.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's not just in vision, right? Because everybody would say, well, we all want a happy marriage. But if you don't understand or agree on what that looks like, you're going to be heading in different directions from the very beginning. And that's not a real partnership. And neither is somebody who's like, hey, I'm going to teach you. I'm going to show you why you're wrong in your definition. Come with me, partner with me. My job is to correct you. That's not a real partnership, right? That's more of a it's a different kind of relationship.
Sure. So going back to that, I remember when I was doing premarital with my wife, our facilitator told us, there's a few things that you guys really got to make sure you agree on, right? That there's kind of like, check the list on these topics. And we kind of went through a book that had all those topics that they touched on. And there was like religion and politics and how to raise children and money. And there's a couple other things in there. So if you're aligned in most of these are the main things that could make it or break it for some things. So in your role, you kind of have the privilege of going around looking for partners for your church.
Yeah.
Do you have a checklist of some sort? Do you have certain things where you're like, I want to make sure these 3 or 4, whatever many things are that I'm looking for primarily as I start to explore what a good partnership might be?
Yeah, I think so. So there's like a list of things that are you a good match for our church? Like in particular. So God's given us some distinctives. And so there are things that would make sense for us to partner with long term. And for us, it's stuff like the sovereignty of God, right? Some doctrinal things like the authority of Scripture, the Trinity, things like that are really, foundational to our church. And then you have a few more, I don't know, generic, like business kind of like, do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy for engaging other people with the gospel?
So let me pause right there. As you look at non-Western ministries, how common is it that they just don't have a plan? Is that a big deal?
It's scary to me how common it is that somebody feels a call to ministry, finds some people who are willing to give them some money, and just goes out and works his heart out. God bless him. Like, please keep him alive and out of jail. But that's not really a plan.
So you're talking individuals. Do you see the same thing with like organizations, or do you usually work out those kinks before they get more established?
Now, a lot of these guys, or even women, right? So we'll have the affirmation of a local, maybe a congregation or a denomination, and have the ability to gather people around them and go.
Okay. So it's all vision.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And I think because Western churches have caught some of the vision of like, hey, there's people who are able to do this better than I can. Sometimes resources flow in that direction because the vision really is captivating, right? This guy has a vision that's compelling, and he can get resources and a little bit of staffing or other volunteers around him and just run with it.
Got it. So like, if I'm hearing you correctly, what I'm hearing is, let's say a church says, hey, I have a heart for Syria.
Yeah.
And I don't speak the language. I don't live there. Nobody from my church wants to go. But I showed up at Syria, and there was one guy that said, I want to reach Syrians. And that's it. I found him, right? And they might not ask the deeper questions of, well, how? What does it take? How are you going to scale? How are you going to multiply? Whatever else the other questions would be. So we just sometimes jump in very quickly. And so people can actually start and launch things without that follow through.
And that guy probably will check a lot of boxes. Right? He's probably not a heretic. Right? He probably loves Jesus, and he probably does have a call to ministry on his life. He has charisma, and he has the ability and the desire to go. But it probably needs more than that if it's
Sure.
going to be a sustainable long-term partnership. So I don't want to say that guy shouldn't be in ministry,
Okay.
or that he's automatically right, like, oh, he's way off his rocker. Like, we met a lot of people that they should be doing ministry, but they're not a good partner for us because our heart is really longer term than what he's planning.
Okay. I remember when we started our organization, our ministry the first time, we didn't really have much of a plan. We had a vision, we had aspirations, we communicate those well.
Yep.
But there were so many pieces that still had to fall into place. We had to hear from God that, based on what you're describing, we would have been a terrible partner at that point.
Yeah, I would have shut you down so fast.
And then God, obviously, throughout the years has blessed us to where we are at a point we can be a good partner to your church and vice versa.
Yeah.
So at what point do you look at some of those prospects and say, they're not a good partner yet? Is it worthwhile investing, coaching, connecting them somehow so that they can grow into becoming a potential good prospect or a good partner?
So I keep an eye on a lot of these guys. I got a whole file full of them.
Okay.
So I watch, as much as I can. One of the biggest challenges that I don't have the resources. I'm not that guy, right? I've not built an organization. And so I don't have personally the resources or the experience to step in and coach somebody through that process. I can recognize that you're missing it, but I can't fill those gaps. And on top of that, I don't really know a lot of people from that global ministry pool who do.
Okay.
Or if they do, they're usually so involved in another organization, they don't really have time to go invest in one of these up-and-coming prospects.
Yeah.
And so one of the big gaps that I think the world needs right now are people with those skills who are willing and see it as their ministry.
Yeah.
To really invest in those kinds of, I would say, organizations more than individuals. But yeah, how do you invest in some of those up and coming prospects in a way that gets them over that hump?
Sure.
And so we haven't seen a lot.
Okay.
I think you're one of the few people that I know who's actively pursuing that kind of a ministry of investing in people that need a little help getting pieces together, gaps filled. And God's been really kind to you to bring in a lot of resources along the way that are supernatural relationships.
Well, we just remembered what it was like back then, right? When you're describing when we were starting and we needed that coaching, we needed that help, we needed that structure. Just like an outsider can come in and say, you have these gaps. Me, when I was living it, we knew we had those gaps. Like,
Right?
You're not telling me anything new.
Yeah.
You're pointing at the same thing that hurts right now, but I need a solution.
Yeah.
And many times, oftentimes people did have connections, they have suggestions, they have things, and we pursued those. But I remember at times thinking, yes, I want to learn that, and I want to grow in that, but I also got to feed my wife tomorrow.
Yep.
So be able to get to the point where I can, right? Because that takes time and that takes effort. And so for us, we were just blessed throughout our journey to have people that were very gracious to us in investing early on. Think angel investors in a business, right?
Yep.
Similar for us, for an organization, investing early on, in a sense, that's smart money, coming in with funds, but coming in with advice, coming in with connections, coming with something else to help us build that capacity. I don't think without some of those key partners, we would have gone to take off.
Yep.
And so now if we can play some kind of part for some other missional entrepreneurs or leaders, visionaries that are teachable, that are growing, that have a heart, and are open to learning some of those things, I just want to give back what we received, right?
And the cool thing is, approaching somebody who has those skills and is willing to invest, that is a plan, right? So if somebody has a gap and they find a coach, wow, okay, you have a plan. Maybe you haven't practiced those skills enough to show fruit yet, but that's something worth investing in.
Sure.
So I think even having the resource available and being able to make that step is huge in the global. And I think that investment, you mentioned angel investors, that's a paradigm that's really common in the West. People who can do startup investment or provide startup capital or coaching from the beginning. We're familiar with that. That's not a huge paradigm in the places that we've been. Like Southeast Asia, that's not typically how people think about starting a ministry. Usually it's a supernatural experience. They have a call from God and they just go. There's not, and you wonder what would happen if it was a common occurrence that you hear the call and instead of just hitting the gas, you actually pause and find some people who are willing to affirm and invest so that you can go further with more people.
Okay, so I'm hearing two things that I want to highlight. One is, it sounds like strategic planning is definitely a Western strength. So if we look at cross-cultural collaboration and we start asking ourselves, in the West, what do we have to offer others? This sounds to be like a thing where we can come alongside of other partners in other cultures and say, one of the things we're good at is we know how to plan ahead, we know how to forecast, we know how to reverse engineer, whatever the thing may be.
Right.
Right. And I think probably our whole audience in the West is saturated with frameworks for North Star and Kanban and this and that and whatever that may be, right? For how this might look. And so whatever the model is, I know I've sat down with leaders in Latin America and just saying, hey, here's where you are, here's where you're headed. Can we look at the gaps and reverse engineer? And that was like mind blowing. Like, oh, you mean I could do that backwards? And so, yeah, I don't want to downplay that at all. I think that is huge, just to kind of keep in mind as we're going into this.
Yeah, just a way of thinking that by itself isn't going to actually change the world, right? It hasn't. But when you connect that with what God's already doing in some of these pockets, some of these places of the world, South Asia, South America, Central Asia, it can really have a synergistic effect. And I think we both get more by working together. That's the whole idea of partnership, right? Is that we get farther together.
Sure. The other thing I heard, and I think this is interesting to clarify and highlight maybe if it's true what I understood, you're saying that there's, in other cultures, maybe Latin America in your case, East Asia, where you might be more familiar with, you're saying that there's some of these things, angel investors, strategic planning, there's other factors that may not be as robust as they're in the West. Do you think there are regions of the world where cultural realities are hindering their entrepreneurship potential in missions?
Cultural realities. You like beyond poverty?
Beyond poverty. Yes, like let's say you have somebody that has vision, and in a Western culture where people are very individualistic and encourage entrepreneurship and trying something new and risk, they like people that are not risk averse and so on. And that's celebrated. They're going to encourage that person to move forward and maybe have some resources. Versus somewhere where it's very communal. Right. And if I stray from their culture or the status quo or say we need something new, it's almost saying to everybody else, what you've done is not enough. Yeah. Do you think that's a reality in some parts of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've seen that so many times where people have a real calling from God and they see the opportunity, but either they're afraid to do it because it's socially unacceptable for them to step into that leadership role without the existing leadership tapping them first. Yeah. Right? Like a younger son jumping over. Like that's such a barrier. Yeah. And then beyond that, we've even seen just affirming the call to go cross-culturally is fairly uncommon because the need is so great in their own context. Sure. Right? So any call to ministry is almost always angled towards their own community. And the needs are huge, and that's a really strong, I think it's a really good landing point for a lot of the people that are called to ministry is stay in your own context, be a minister of the gospel to your own people. But you also have to obey the cross-cultural commands. Yes. And so I think we've seen a lot of that tension show up, right?
So it might be easier to think beyond your community when you are in a nice cul-de-sac with a white picket fence, 2.5 kids, and a pool in the backyard, right?
That has its challenges too, right?
Yes, sure.
The gravitational pull there is...
that is true. That is true. But no, going back to what you were saying about leadership and being tapped on the shoulder, I remember when we started a missions agency, or when we were thinking about starting a missions agency before we officially launched, I remember reaching out to another Latin American missions director. He wasn't a founder, but he inherited leadership of this missions organization, had been leading it for a while. And I said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Do you have any advice? And the way he reacted, he didn't say this outright, but he responded in a way that I think this is what he felt. He felt that by me saying, I want to start a missions organization, I was saying, what you're leading is not enough. Yeah. We need something better. Yeah. And so I, instead of getting encouraged or celebrated by that desire to innovate and expand new vessels for new wine in the kingdom of God and missions in Latin America, I almost got that pushback that, why don't you just join us and, expand here? Or why don't you something else? And I wonder, in our case, we had, various ministry connections, other partners and funding and things that helped and were a blessing along the way. Had we not had so many of those other connections, and that was our primary point of authority and access to funding or credibility or whatever, it would have been difficult to push beyond that and still try to launch something new and just have enough, cash in the bank, oxygen in the tank, grit despite my community, whatever that may be, right? That's runs out first to say, let me persevere until there is fruit. Because then something interesting happened. Once we started to see fruit, everybody that had been saying, why are you doing this? Why don't you just look at the status quo? They caught the vision because it wasn't the vision anymore. It started to be a reality.
Right.
Be like, of course this should be a thing. This is awesome. We told you from the beginning, right?
Right.
And they're just, it's very short memories that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think it's a real hurdle that you faced, and I think lots of other people will face when they're given that call. We just have to deal with that as a reality today.
Sure. Well, I've alluded quite a bit to Reflejo, to organizational lead. I'll give the audience a little bit more context.
Like, give them what they want, man.
Yes, to what this is, just to be helpful and for now, for maybe other episodes down the road. So, and I don't know if you've heard the story. I'll tell it chronologically instead of just big picture who we are today.
Okay.
Which our team doesn't like because they work very hard on these like buzzwords and phrases and things.
It's such a good one though.
Yeah, but God works in mysterious ways, and I want to celebrate that. The short version is my wife and I, we both individually, independently felt the call to go to Afghanistan, which. First of all, it was a hard call, right? You got to count the costs. And if you weren't counting the costs when you call your mom and tell her, and she's got to count the costs, and that's a harder conversation. And that was still easier than my father-in-law and telling him, hey, your baby daughter, here's my plan for her life. Will you let me marry her? But yeah, we thought we're going to go to Afghanistan. We're going to live there. We're going to reach a people group called Pashtuns. Pashtuns today are about 90 million people, are an unreached people group, which means for most of their dialects, there's no finished Bible translation. They're from Afghanistan, Pakistan. They're from that region primarily. And there's no church building that they can go to. There's no pastor whose door they can knock on. There, you can't, turn on the radio or TV easily and hear a gospel presentation in their language. There's some of those things now through missionaries, but there's just not enough access to assume that the majority of Pashtuns will meet a Christian at least once in their lifetime.
Yeah, they're really insulated.
Right.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is a group that my wife and I both said, not only do we want to go to Afghanistan, we want to go to this group, and they are hard to reach. The Taliban, actually, they're from Pashtun background. So this is one of their main policing groups when it comes to fundamentalist Islam. And that's the kind of people that they are. Not all Pashtuns are radicals, but they are under the influence of a small minority of radicals that really keep them very policed in terms of access to the Bible or to Christianity or anything else. And after counting the cost, after saying, yeah, we're willing to go, we're going to do this, we're putting ourselves at the feet of the cross, and God, if it takes our life, we're there. What happened was God closed the door. So they always prepare you for, it's going to be hard to say yes. And I always think about this story when I think of our own story. It's Abraham, right? Go to the land that will show you.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm leaving everything behind. I don't know where that is. I'll start going. And then, I'll make you into a great nation. I don't know how it's going to work, God. I'm already getting up there. So is my wife. And eventually, he had this whole detour with Ishmael, but then he had a son with his wife, and he said, okay, I'm ready, right? It's going to happen. And then the moment when God says, all right, kill him now. Like, let's start again.
Right.
And it's just like, what? Like, I already counted the cost. I thought it was going to work out. You told me, and then you're taking it away from me. And that's what it felt like for us to realize, there were health issues. There were security concerns. There was multiple things that happened. Long story short, we tried to go 5 times. Some of those, like, I remember being already in Asia, bags in hands at the gate waiting, and everything said canceled. And just God said, that's not for you. And so we ended up coming back to the U.S. We realized our heart is there, but we're not meant to be there. And what God slowly started doing in our lives is say, we're going to use you to send, not to go yourselves. And looking back at my story, there was a book. I don't know if you've read this book before. It's a really old book, The Challenge of Missions.
It's on my shelf.
Okay. If you've not read it, I recommend it. It was one of the most influential books in my early journey to get involved into missions. Not once I became a missionary, but before. And the whole story of this guy is he couldn't live where he was, so he became a sender. And so just looking back many years down the road, I connect the dots here. But God told us, you're not meant to go, you're going to send. We ended up serving elsewhere. We ended up going to Paraguay to serve with Lebanese immigrants in Paraguay, which is a whole other story we can get into in another episode. A lot of fun. But while we were there, we saw that there was a lot of Latinos that had a call to missions. They wanted to go somewhere, kind of like we're talking about.
Yeah.
God is raising up people, and they didn't know where. And they'd never heard of Pashtuns. They had no idea about what was happening in Afghanistan or the need. So we started sharing that with them. We started sharing with people, hey, there's this huge people group, there's this country, there's a big need, they don't have the gospel. And they just wanted to be obedient. So we started praying with them. We started praying together. God raised missionaries for the Pashtuns, raised missionaries for Afghanistan. And the people that came to this group, I mean, the first prayer meetings were once a week, or maybe 5 or 6 people. And they invited their friends, and they went to share in churches, and this just kept growing and growing and growing. And long story short, one day we look up, and there was a crowd of people that was all going to churches to share about Pashtuns, but we had about 40 people saying, I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
Dave, who can send me?
Yeah.
And so we looked around, we talked to different missions agencies that we knew at the time and said, hey, could I give you 40 candidates that all want to go to this one part of the world and, with a nice little bow on them, and it's all prepackaged for you, just figure it out. We couldn't find anybody to take it.
Yeah.
So there were a couple groups, some that didn't have the capacity, didn't have the bandwidth to take on that many people and go to that part of the world. And then there was this other category of people that said, sure, we'll take him. And then they tried sending somebody to Afghanistan before, a single lady going to a Taliban-controlled region, and they said, we're going to keep you safe, we'll give you training, we'll pay for you to take 6 weeks of Taekwondo.
Oh.
So you get a yellow belt, they get AK-47s, you're going to be fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. So when we realized it's like, we cannot give our people to these kinds of organizations, there needs to be a better solution. We looked around. We kept praying and praying and praying. God showed us the right organization, the right sending agency to partner with. Eventually, God came back to us and challenged us, saying, when do you become the answer to that prayer? And that's how Reflejo started. So the word
That's
Reflejo.
wild. So do you guys give out black belts? Is that what makes you guys different?
We try to avoid getting into that position in the first place, meaning we still go to very difficult places, but we try to do so in a way that is wise and prudent, honoring the culture, the context, understanding the risks, so that people can stay safe as they go in as much as possible. That being said, a big part of us and our understanding with our staff is we don't put safety over the mission.
Yep.
Right? Probably at some point in the future of our organization, it's not happened yet, we will have somebody go through something traumatic, go through a major life crisis, be held hostage, be killed. Something might happen eventually down the road. It's just, if we keep growing, statistically speaking, we'll face something difficult.
Yeah.
We want to be prudent. We want to know that we did our best to care for our missionaries, but we can't sit at home saying we feel safe while they're dying every single day, being damned to eternity in hell, because we didn't go and share the gospel with them. Yeah.
God didn't call us to be safe, right?
Yeah.
He called us to be partners in what he's doing. So his son wasn't safe, and he has a history of sending his sons into hazard.
Yeah.
For because he loves the world.
Yeah.
Not more than his son or his daughters, right? But we get to be an expression of that. And
so when we look at cross-cultural partnership, some of the things that we saw from the beginning were we're a new agency created in Latin America for Latinos. And one of the main reasons we created this new agency is because there was no indigenous agency in Latin America that was like this, that did this kind of work, right? We're meeting a need, we're filling a gap. And because there was a gap, there was no template within our culture that we liked. There were templates. They were a little bit different, right? If there was a perfect solution, I would have just said, I'll join them and I'll do their thing and I'll just, But we didn't find that. But obviously, the West has a much longer tenure of missionary agencies and missions cross-culturally and so on. So we had a lot of connections in the States that we leveraged to learn from the U.S. what works, what can we adapt to Latin culture, and how can we go beyond with that. Not only that, I mean, the region we're going to, there were very few Latino missionaries that had gone to that part of the world. So the expertise pool in Latin America was
because
tiny.
there wasn't that template.
Right. And
so you got to build both sides.
Yes. And so at that point, well, the ones that were there were Europeans, were Americans, were Australians, were something else. We got to learn from them, right? We got to learn from the Koreans, we got to learn from whoever was there before. And that means we need to enter into cross-cultural partnership right away from the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are two pieces I love the most about Reflejo is the prayer part that's been just baked in, right? That's the core value of the whole organization. It started with prayer. It continues with prayer. It'll end with prayer. It's going to be prayer all the way through. It's great. I think that's one of the pieces that the Western Church has yet to learn is the power and the impact of consistent strategic prayer. And we often catch a vision and we're like, hey, I've got free time and some money. Let's go. And then we just pray as we board the plane. And like, okay, we've seen some disastrous results come from a lack of prayer. And I think a lack of sending is a result of that. So I'm excited that your sending has prayer from the get-go, but also that piece of partnership as a foundational ingredient to the organization's template, right? Is that it has to be a partnership.
Yeah.
And so you guys have learned a lot about partnership, and churches in the West, organizations in the West, we are slowly catching up. And so you're really pioneering in both aspects of strategic prayer as a sending ingredient and cross-cultural, intercultural partnership, multicultural partnership from the beginning. I love that. It's one of the reasons that we were like all about what you guys are doing is these are the exact kinds of things that we feel like we need to learn.
Yeah.
And so I love that you guys came to the U.S. to learn how to do it. And then I'm like, okay, now the U.S. gets to learn from you on how to do cross-cultural ministry in a really difficult place. Right. So there's not a lot of people here. And so learning from one another in that context, the stakes are high, but man, the rewards are really, really sweet. So that's going to be, I think that's going to be like a major part of conversations moving forward. How do we do that? How do what have we learned and what have you learned? And how can we learn from you?
Sure. And I think that's what this is, right? This podcast is time together talking and sharing. The idea is we want to share what we're learning along the way. And we want, as people see this, to start that being a conversation, a thought process in their mind, a category. If they've not thought about global sending before, to start thinking about it. If they've not thought about cross-cultural partnerships before, start thinking about it and start thinking about it in a way that is good, that is positive, that builds on what we've learned already. And if somebody out there listening already is an expert at this and knows better, I mean, give us a call.
Please do. We'd love to learn.
We'd love to learn. We'd love to have you. Come share with us.
But if you don't, if they don't have a partner or if they don't already have a pathway to partnership, I think Reflejo is a great place to start. Just because you can pray from anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Your guys are praying from everywhere for a lot of different people, groups, and locations and regions.
Yeah.
And so it's a great starting place. And then if God calls them to engage places like that, there really is a good history. You guys enjoy partnering.
Yeah.
You're good at it. And so
that is one thing. And I'll plug that in as we're here right now. The first thing we want to get people to do if they're considering partnering with us is pray.
Yeah.
And you guys have seen this at your church. We try to make that as easy as possible for you. So wherever you're seeing this, we'll leave a link on how to plug in to pray with us, pray for us. We share prayer requests daily, weekly, monthly, whatever is best for you.
Yep.
But that is such a key thing. We can never have enough people praying, right?
Yeah.
We could have too much money, too much staff, too much whatever. I don't think we get to have too much prayer.
No.
So feel free to join the team. Let's get praying together. That'd be awesome.
And there's I mean, there's Zoom calls, there's in-person meetings, there's prayer guides. Like, it really is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure for the prayer side of things.
Yeah, yeah.
And we hope that God will send more people as a result of that prayer. Right? They don't have to go through a Fleo. They can go all on their own.
Exactly.
Just make sure you have a plan.
Yes, yes. I want you to call this guy. So any final thoughts as we wrap up this first conversation? This has been so fun.
Yeah, no, I love hearing the chronological story. That was really awesome. Same thing for us, my family. We're the sending side of things, but we're learning how to pray and we're learning how to send. And I can't really imagine a better way to do that than somebody who's learning the same kinds of things from a different context, right? Because I think that's what heaven's going to be like, right? We all get to worship and celebrate the same God from a slightly different angle and perspective together. So I think this is it's a little slice of heaven, Dave. We get a little piece of heaven together in a studio, just dreaming and talking about what God's doing.
Awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time. Stay tuned.
All right.